Hey friend, Brandon here. I never thought I'd say this before, but it looks like Apple is trying to make a better Android phone than everyone else, even Samsung and Google. We'll see if that's actually true though. Let's ask the Google Assistant how. Who makes a better Android phone, Apple or Google?
According to business, CNN.com.
This video is sponsored in part by Raycon and their everyday E25 earbuds. Click the link in the description below to get 15% off your order or go to buyraycon.com/thisistechtoday. Please hit that like button, share, subscribe, hit that bell icon to be notified when I post a new video. I'd really appreciate it. Now, before any of you get on my case for being an Apple iPhone fanboy, I've used Google Pixel phones as my primary device for years. I've made so many videos on the Google Pixel, Android, and have even been a source of leaks for the Google Pixel and so much more. I'm a big fan of Android, and I know a lot about it, but I'm also not an Android fanboy. I keep it balanced, objective, and honest, and fair no matter what. There's good and bad on all sides. This channel is about nuance. So the question remains, how is Apple trying to make a better Android smartphone than even Google or Samsung? Well, with the launch of iOS 14 beta, Apple has brought a bunch of new changes to their mobile operating system, and quite a number of them are quite surprising. In fact, some of them are so surprising that Android users have been saying, wait a minute, Android has had that for a decade. Well, here's the thing. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who did it first. It matters who did it and currently does it best. The first fingerprint reader was on an Android, and it was a really awful fingerprint swipe method on a Motorola phone. Definitely not as nice as what Apple did with Touch ID and what many Google Pixel users love and honestly miss. Boy, do I miss this thing, and on the back where it should be. So, did Apple do it better? Let's find out. The Google Assistant is easily known to be the better assistant on mobile devices. I'm continually amused at how so many of my friends use iPhones and easily share how much they hate Siri. So that's, pretty bad. Oh, and let's not forget how often Siri is activated on accident, so Apple's got to figure that out. But one thing that was particularly frustrating was how Siri took up the entire screen and made your phone essentially unusable while Siri is active. That would cover up any information you may have just been looking at and creates a clunky experience. Now Siri acts in a way that is quite similar to the Google Assistant, where it takes up way less on the screen with a small overlay. I do find that Google's style seems to make more sense to me as a card that pops up, while Siri on iOS 14 looks like it just is on top of everything else, and it just seems a little bit unbalanced with the rest of the screen. That's a detail that I wasn't expecting Apple to miss, so hopefully they fix it before the public release. Customization is one of the best things about Android. If you want to adjust something, you can do it, but that has changed recently. We are seeing this often with assistants and the dedicated buttons that go along with them. And sometimes it's confusing because you mix it up with your power button, so kind of a mess. While you can still make changes to an Android phone, you often have to have a bit of some coding experience and time to make those changes. One benefit about Apple's approach is that it's mostly pretty simple and easy for most people to get into, but with the expense of a lack of some customization and fine-tuning. So maybe giving you 90% in an easy format should be given more credit. So why am I talking about that? Well, this. 2 taps. So that's the notification shade. 3 taps. The Google Assistant. So one of the things that you can do is you can go to settings, go to accessibility, and you'll find this option down here for touch. And then you can go to back tap. And then you have the option to assign things based upon double tap or triple tap. So for me, I have control center chosen, but you can choose a bunch of different things, whether it's Siri, the notifications, the control center, or even the Google Assistant if you set up a Siri shortcut. Siri shortcuts are a really powerful thing that Android doesn't have at this level. So I can just create a shortcut where I just say, hey Google, with Siri, and then it'll run the Google Assistant. It's pretty simple. You can also do something that's a little bit more robust if you wanted to as well. It's true that there are Google Home routines, but it still isn't as powerful as Siri shortcuts and not as intuitive. So as long as I have a Siri shortcut set up, I can just go into the touch. On back tap, I choose triple tap to go to Hey Google. So you can assign a double tap or triple tap to launch the Google Assistant, almost as if you have a default button for your iPhone for the Google Assistant, which is nuts. It's not perfect though. When I have it in my car dock and the bottom of the phone is resting on the dashboard, it'll still activate the assistant, or even when I set my phone down, just not quite there yet. Oh, and Android 11 is bringing a similar gesture, so we'll find out if they do it any better. Another great thing is that calls no longer dominate your whole screen, but show up as a notification that drops down from the top. I like this a lot, and I think it's kind of a wash between iOS and Android, unless you include call screening on Android. In that case, then, So this one I didn't know that I wanted until Apple showed me. So Apple really cares about privacy, and one cool thing that they're adding is when an app copies or checks out what you have in your clipboard, which can be really creepy if you didn't actually intend on the app knowing what is in your clipboard. Essentially, if you have something copied in your clipboard and you just open up the app, it can actually just pull that information without you knowing about it. So now Apple is disclosing whether or not an app has pulled that information. So here's an example of me actually doing it intentionally. I have something copied from my script. I'm just gonna paste it. And when I do that, it says Twitter pasted from Asana. So it's disclosing when the app is actually pulling something from your clipboard and where that information came from, like Asana in this case. So when an app pulls that information without you giving it permission or intentionally sharing it with the app, my question is, what do they do with that information? How do they keep my personal information safe if I have a password or financial information in my clipboard? So a feature like this exposes apps that are taking information from you without you knowing about it. TikTok is guilty of doing this, and they're addressing it soon. iOS 14 also brings Apple Translate. This is great because we always need more tools to help us better communicate. Hello, how are you doing today? Perhaps the one thing that Apple Translate may do better is punctuation. But the Google Translate has a camera, conversation view, and the ability to transcribe. With iOS 14, Apple brings speech to text on device instead of having to send your information through the internet and then back to your device to dictate what you have said. Period. In fact, we're testing it out right now with iOS 13 on the far left, with the Google Pixel 4 XL running the Android 11 beta, and on the far right, the iOS 14 beta. Period. So, how well are they doing, and who is winning? Typically, you would see that Android is the fastest at dictating your own speech, but in iOS 14, well, it definitely sped things up quite a bit compared to iOS 13. Now, this next one is one that's been asked for a long time, having a default email and browser chosen by you, the user. Much of the delay for this has to do with security and a good experience for you, the end user. I don't believe that this is available in the current beta of iOS 14. I haven't been able to find it. If any of you know how to do that, maybe leave a comment down below, but it's nice to have that option. I would love to know what other areas you'd like to have the choice in having a default app. For me, it would be the calendar, but let me know in the comments. Another thing that is really cool is that Safari recognizes when your password has been compromised. If you've ever seen websites like Have I Been Pwned, it's kind of pulling from databases like that, and then it'll recognize whether or not you're using a password that has been compromised. I found out about this because Max Weinbeck shared this on Twitter, and he needs to use a password manager, you noob. Oh, and Chrome has this feature too. Now this one's a really huge quality of life change. Picture in picture. It's actually better than Android. Let me show you. Essentially, you go to full screen on any video and just swipe up and it's right there, and you can pinch to zoom and resize it, which is really awesome. It just floats on top of anything that you're doing. You can do this on YouTube if you go through a browser. Unfortunately, it's not available on the YouTube app natively. I think it's really well done. I actually think it's way better than on Android. It's like really buggy. I don't know what's going on. There's not really an intuitive pinch to zoom thing, and you kind of have to drag from the corner in a weird spot, but I don't know. It's not really great. And I know a lot of you will say, well, Brandon, you're on an Android beta. Well, here's the thing. iOS 14, well, that's on a beta as well. The other thing that I think is really cool is app clips. I like that it's situationally aware. It's a very lightweight thing. It accomplishes a specific task at a specific moment. I know Android has instant apps, but that's actually like kind of the full app. This one is a little bit more situational, and I like that. And it also makes a lot of sense in our post-COVID world. So Android users have enjoyed widgets from the beginning. Interestingly enough, Apple has used widgets on desktops, but not on their phones. But I will say that Apple has implemented widgets in a really great way. I really like the smart stacks, which just really present a smooth and a practical experience. You can choose what things you want to have listed there in the stack. So you just remove something if you want. And honestly, it's way smoother than most widgets on Android. I don't know if you've ever experienced how buggy something like the Play Music widget was on Android. RIP Play Music. But this seems really, really smooth. The one downside is that still everything is being pushed upward. So you can't pin this really wherever you want. It kind of has to sit in a certain area within the confines of everything else on the home screen. Speaking of that, you do have the app library, so you can scroll all the way to the right. You can see some suggested apps. That's a lot like what Android has now. But if you scroll up and down, you have this, and you essentially have a whole app drawer. So you can clear up your desktop for the most part by removing different home screens. Tap down there, you can choose which ones you have and which ones you want to keep. You can get rid of something if you want, and then I'll clean it up for you. Still though, everything still gets pushed up to the top. You can't pin something down here or have negative space there with a really nice wallpaper. So that's still a little annoying. But you know what? The great thing about this, and the hope that I have, is that this is showing that Apple is listening. It's willing to make some changes, but they want to make sure that they're doing it carefully and intentionally. So I have some hope that they'll continue to make some really good changes that may make you a little bit more tempted if you're on the Android side. You know what else I have hope for? That you'll check out this video's sponsor, Raycon and their everyday E25 earbuds, which come at about half the price of other premium wireless earbuds, and you can get for an even greater price of 15% off by clicking the link in the description. Raycon was founded by Ray J, and celebrities like Snoop Dogg are obsessed with them. They look great, fit great, and with a variety of colors and patterns to fit your style, and no dangling wires or funny looking stems, so they look compact, discreet, and stylish. They're a great option for video calls while working from home, working out, or listening to music and podcasts without distracting those that you live with. They even have a great noise isolating fit so you don't hear everyone else either. Being that the everyday E25s are Raycon's greatest model yet, they'll last for up to 6 hours of playtime with an additional 4 full charges available from the case to get you through your day with a reliable and seamless Bluetooth pairing and some deep bass and sound as good as many other top brands out there at a much more affordable price. So don't miss out on your opportunity to get them at their great price with an additional 15% off by clicking the link in the description or going to buyraycon.com/thisistechtoday. Thank you so much to Raycon for sponsoring this portion of the video so I can continue to make content for you for free. So what do you think about Apple's changes in iOS 14? Do you think they're doing some things better than Android? I think so in some areas, but in other areas not so much. If you are an Android user, what kind of things would Apple need to put into their devices that would finally pull you over to their side? I think it's getting less and less difficult to have that kind of struggle. With things like default apps, some customization, and more, it's becoming a little bit more and more tempting to go onto the iOS side. So let me know in the comments what would tempt you to switch over. Thank you so much for watching This Is Tech Today, where we talk about the intersection of technology in our everyday lives, in business, and in all things creative. Until next time.